Welcome everyone to the very special second episode of the Enter the Inkwell podcast. I'm Autumn and I'm joined today by Aska Rognadottir.
Hello.
Been a little bit of a break between episodes. Things have been very busy on our end, but we wanted to get in an episode for the release of Winterspell. Of course, Enter the Inkwell is a competitive Lorcana podcast, so today we will be going over what cards we think have real competitive potential at the big tournaments coming ahead. But first of all, I'm going to do a little intro, 10 minutes, just covering DLC Hong Kong, which Aska and I were both at a couple weeks ago. Of course, we haven't had the chance to talk about it on the podcast. Do you want to take it away, Aska?
All right, we are a competitive podcast, but we have to talk about one thing. These Winterspell cards are adorable. Like, the art direction, it's so good. I love the interpretation and style of the new cards, like the new Enchanted specifically. I don't know. I just wanted to touch on that because you said, "Oh, competitive podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, I love the cards so much in the set."
Oh no, I feel the same. I've seen some mixed opinions on the Enchanteds and especially the Iconics, where some people love them and some people think they don't feel special enough. To me, these are like some of the nicest Enchanteds they've ever done.
I agree.
Like, I love the papercraft style. It's adorable. It's really creative. You know, instead of just having the characters looking like normal.
Yep.
Big fan of that aspect.
I love how we have a bunch of these Enchanteds, and they look noticeably different, not just from other Lorcana cards, but from other Enchanted cards, and then we maybe get more sets where they have their kind of in-house style for the set. I'm excited for that potentially to be a thing now that the art direction is stronger. It's sweet. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Hong Kong. So, Hong Kong was a one-day event, DLC Hong Kong, where top 16 qualified to Continentals, and then the curious thing about it was a 7-round Swiss with a best-of-1 structure. Now, everyone at the event, typically the event was lovely, everyone was great. There were some things different than what I was used to, like how we were like in a ballroom, which was quite unique.
Oh, I love that aspect, though. I don't really like big, soulless convention centers very much. And being in a ballroom just felt much comfier to me.
It was a comfy room. It was a nice room. We then played 7 rounds of best of 1, and the cut being slightly awkward was like, you could get cut at 5-2, which is what happened to me in the event, which is like slightly brutal. But I played green yellow dogs with like a unique like Aurora Tiana kind of build. So I played 4 Aurora 4 Tiana, and I played for full Under the Sea. And the deck felt quite good, actually. I was pretty happy with how I built it. I think like the compromises I made to try to beat Blurple didn't hurt my odds of trying to beat the decks I already had an advantage against, so I won't talk too much about the deck, but it felt good.
Yeah, I really liked how your list looked, like being all in on the UTS plan. Like, I know there were a couple games that day where, you know, you're ending the game and your opponent was showing you their benches in their hand, and you were like, don't even have Chromacon in my deck.
Yep, exactly. That was definitely a big, like, almost like, oh, I did make the right decision, because clearly everyone was packing tons of item hate.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that weekend people were ready for Emerald Chromacon. Maybe not as ready for Under the Sea.
Yep. You had a better event than me, finishing in top 8. Pretty sick.
Yeah, I played blue-green, which has been pretty much my favorite deck since rotation. Definitely other decks I enjoy. I really enjoy playing the dogs deck too. And can enjoy a purple deck on occasion, but blue-green is my main deck for a lot of has been my main deck for a lot of this format. And Cinderella made the deck way better in set 10, so I was very happy to jam it in the event. Really liked how my list was tuned, although it was a pretty, you know, normal looking blue-green list ultimately.
Yeah.
Ended up getting to top 8 before falling out of the tournament, which does get me the Continentals invite and a bunch of fancy foils. Definitely one thing, I was really struggling by the end of the event. Like, best of one, people talk about it being more high variance. And like, because you're just playing one game, you don't get that smoothing of like a second and third game. But I think an aspect I found quite brutal about best of one is the pacing of the day is just kind of relentless, where you play your round, you get your pairing, you go sit down, you introduce yourself to your opponent, you get all set up, you play a single game. And if you're playing a deck like blue-green or blurp or blue-steel or something like that, a long game deck, the game's going to go long. And then you finish, you get maybe 10 minutes to get ready for the next round. And then you're going through it all over again, and it's very relentless. You never, I feel like even if you play a slow deck in best of three, you'll get at least a round at some point in the tournament that goes quickly, and you'll get a nice, half-hour break. It's a lot more chill as a result in some ways.
Best of one felt very, stop-start to me, right?
Yeah.
Especially from my perspective, who's a table talker. I definitely had the perspective of I'm trying to get a read on this person's personality, but also the match clock started and we have 25 minutes to play a game. And then after that game, I'm going to have to do everything associated with end of round procedures and getting some air or eating food or drinking water, whatever, So it felt very we stop, we begin again, and then I have to do this whole ritual again. It definitely felt way less efficient than Best of 3 in terms of actual Lorcana getting played. Though it is a bit of a non-factor, because Best of 1 being high variance and having its awkward points gets a bit... This whole discussion gets thrown a bit out the window when you realize the next Southeast Asian DLC is actually just going to be Best of 3, so clearly we're not alone.
Yeah. Clearly the people want Best of 3, right? So, like you say, it's kind of a non-factor moving forward. Definitely, though, I felt like my brain was much more mush by the end of the day than it would be in a similarly long day of Best of 3, just because of that start-stop, like you say, and, all the sort of self-care, like food, water, stuff like that in between rounds. The pacing's, kind of off where the rounds are really short as well.
It almost felt when you play an online tournament in Magic or something and you have to do all the pacing yourself.
Yeah.
It felt a bit like that for me, actually, I must admit.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've never been great at that with online tournaments.
Oh, neither.
Whereas I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it in paper tournaments recently. But yeah, good event overall. I loved how the side events were run. For all my criticisms of Best of 1 as a competitive format, for side events, it's actually kind of perfect because you just rattle through your rounds so quickly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, one last thing about the actual main event. I need to shout out Tim, who came all the way from Sweden, and I had no idea he was coming until I got a text from him, at some point. I just booked my flight to Hong Kong. And I was great, And he shows up to Hong Kong 2 days before the event, where I had planned my whole thing as a vacation plus there's a photo of you at Disneyland there, it was a vacation plus tournament. Tim shows up for 3 days and top 8s the whole thing, and I'm damn, that is
what a hero,
impressive.
He did it on no sleep as well.
Yeah.
I kind of stunned anyone could top 8 with that little sleep.
And his Ursula voice stealer. I was also astonished about that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, shout outs to Tim. It was a good weekend for the two of you.
It was great. Great DLC, but also very excited for Ghent in a few weeks too, which is going to have Winterspell cards. Look at that, lead-in.
Oh, good segue. Good segue.
Good segue, yeah. So we should talk about these Winterspell cards. There's a lot of powerful ones. I think, the recent sets, Whispers of the Well and now Winterspell, very, very powerful sets. I think the level of care that's gone into the designs of the cards has really shot up recently. So there's just a lot of playables. Like we're going to be doing our top 15 here, top 15 each of Winterspell, but there are plenty of cards that have impressed me that aren't even on this list. Like I know just this morning we were talking about Bambi.
Yep.
That card's really nice. There's a bunch of cards that don't make the cut.
I had to pick from a list here of like 25 to 30. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. The tuning levers they're using on these cards compared to before are like really nice, and the cards are just good in a consistent way that I don't think they've always been before.
Yeah, you compare this to a set like Reign of Jafar, and it's a real jump up in terms
Yeah.
of like you say, the tuning levers and consistency.
A lot of these
Feels like they have.
Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, it feels like they have much more of an idea what they're doing with these designs. It's really quite impressive.
A lot of these designs feel like they very much smooth out your draw and like make the games play out like in a more stable way, almost. Where like we've been playing cards like Genie and Elsa and Sail the Azurite Sea for so long for a reason. It's because it's exactly what they do. But that's exactly what those cards do. But now we're maybe seeing more cards that kind of accomplish that. So the cards you have to play in the decks, the new cards facilitate you to do the old things that Dogs and Amber Seal were doing, but maybe not in such a high variance spiky way where it's like, oh, my Chromicon died, so I lost the game. Maybe you can just play it more like a regular Lorcana deck, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I really like that aspect, just making decks a bit more consistent. But then at the same time, we also have some cards that are maybe a bit more swingy that you can build around to. A lot of stuff going on. Let's get into the top 15s.
Yeah.
If you're listening, we're going to talk through the cards as we go. But also over on YouTube, we're going to have visual aids up on screen so you can see the lists, see the cards, and all that good stuff. So my number 15 is Minnie Mouse, Mrs. Cratchit, which I think is a card a lot of people might not expect in these top 15s. Because, it's not a card that's had much hype around compared to a lot of the other cards that are coming later. But I think this card is really impressive. You get a lot for your investment here. You get a 3/4 that quests for 2, which is great. Has ward. So it's kind of functioning, like a lot of these ward questers are almost like burn spells sometimes, where it's like it comes down, your opponent can't deal with it outside of a Demona. And then you have this ability that puts the top card of your face down under one of your characters or locations with boost, and if you do, draw a card. And this ability is really sick because you're getting 2 things from it. One is you're getting a card, so it's replacing itself, much like Genie, much like something like Hades looking for a deal. You're getting a card out of the deal. You're also getting some ink out the deal, where you're boosting. You save ink. If you're targeting your Flynn Rider, you're saving 2 ink. You're saving ink when you're targeting your Bambis or your Genies or your Cats. And that makes up for the 5 ink investment. A lot of the time you're spending 5, but it feels like you're spending 3 or 4 for a lot of rewards.
Yeah, this card is so nice. I love the Genie comparison. I think like that's actually exactly the comparison I would have made, where for Genie you get the 4 ink 2/4 evasive that quests for 2 draws a card. But this one you almost get like an extra ink sometimes, and then it has ward instead of invasive, which like is worse on first read, but you can build your deck in a way that facilitates it, especially because it goes so well with, you were talking about the 3 ink Genie, the one that you boost it and it gains extra lore. This combines really well with cards like that, and that makes you almost want to play it in a deck with a more aggressive slant, and then the ward really plays into that and helps you do that.
Yeah, exactly. Also, a cool detail about this card, it can let you boost a character twice in a turn, which isn't nothing when you have a Cheshire Cat in your deck.
You can, in fact, boost your cat twice and move 4 damage in a turn. It is pretty cool.
So, I'm very excited about Minnie Mouse. I know you've gotten to play with the card. I haven't had a chance to play with her yet, but definitely on the list of things I want to check out soon.
Oh, I think this might be the card, actually, by coincidence, that I've built the most decks around. Maybe second place, but it's a nice one.
I mean, it's just a cool build around, right?
It is.
So you're number 15.
It's Mulan Resourceful Recruit. This is the 2-ink inkable 1/4 that quests for lore equal to its power, equal to its strength, I suppose. So it by default quests for 1, but when you give it any power boosts, it quests up to 6. And I'm like, I don't know. The interesting thing about this card is that 6 is just so much lore that it kind of overrides any like reasonable evaluation we've currently had in Lorcana. Like Daisy Duck questing for 6 often ends the game, right? If it gets to sit there unassailed and quest. Mulan gets to do that in 1 turn, and also you can just play it ahead of time and then eventually find something that buffs it, whether it's the Red Song or a Tramp 2, or other like combo-esque cards that get this to 6 power, or even like 4 power, but you can do it more consistently, I guess. So this kind of burn effect is really powerful, especially when it comes on a 2-mana card that just kind of like functions as a pretty efficient minion to begin with. I don't know. I like this card. I'm not 100% sure how to build around it yet, but it's very compelling to me.
Yeah, I really like this card too. It definitely feels like, when you're casting it on its own, it's not very impressive, but once you start combining it with things, it does really silly turns. You can even do like more low-key stuff. Like Snowfort is a card I know some people are very hyped about. Doesn't quite make my top 15, I'm sorry to say, but it does work very well with Milan. Suddenly your Milan quests for 2 every single turn, and it's really hard to remove with the extra resist.
Yep, it's just so big.
My number 14 is Ohana Means Family, where 3-cost action. Remove all damage from chosen character of yours. Draw a card for each damage removed this way. Of course, this is very similar to Rapunzel from very early on in the game's history, the 1/5 that does the same effect. A bit worse, very clearly a bit worse, because you don't get the body, you don't get the 2 quest. In exchange, does cost 1 less and can potentially draw you more cards, because Rapunzel always capped you at 3. Ohana can draw you even as many as 5, quite realistically. I know I was playing a game the other day where I got to swing a Tramp 7 into a Demona and draw 5, and that was very funny.
Oh my god.
So this card is very cool. I would say this card has a very high ceiling and a very low floor. I've played with and against it a bit, and definitely, sometimes it's going to rot in your hand, especially if your opponent's savvy about you having it in their deck. Maybe they're not going to quest in ways that let you get those attacks that are going to draw you a bunch of cards by damaging your characters. You really have to like pick and choose your moments with it. But I do think the ceiling's really powerful, and amber is a color that's always looking for some nice card draw. So that makes it quite compelling too, the fact that this is an amber card.
How do I put this? If this was a Magic card, I might actually mention the fact that you're allowed to put as many basic lands in your deck as you want. I am not a fan of this card. I think if it was uninkable, it would be a complete non-starter. I think the fact that it doesn't have the floor of Rapunzel, where you got to pay 4 ink and just draw a card and make 2 lore next turn or have a singer, it just makes it significantly worse. I think this is like, as you said, like you're very correct that this is a role player in these archetypes. That these yellow decks that want draw. I think the only thing that I find so questionable about that is these yellow decks that hypothetically would want this card also want to play with Raging Storm. So it leads to less like mid-rangey kind of board battling, and then you end up with this card in your hand. It's like, oh, this is just, I can't even turn this into a draw 2 most of the time because of the swingy nature of the game.
Yeah, I will say in the blue-yellow decks that you're referring to, it has looked, or the Sapphire Amber even, it has looked particularly awkward.
Yeah.
Just because, like you say, they do not battle very well. Like, maybe the best thing it can do is, you get your damage on a Hades or something and draw off that. But then you're on 7 ink. How much do you need the card draw at that point? I don't know. The card still interests me. I do think it's like a lot of draw power in the right home. I guess one thing is we are getting a lot of draw engines in general in this set. So maybe that makes it a little bit less valuable. Like we have Bambi, like mentioned earlier. We have a couple cards that are coming up later in Amber as well that are going to draw cards. So
we certainly have more smoothing than we used to, but this card is still something that could play a role in an Ember deck that I'm just not seeing at the minute, right?
Yeah. One thing I will say before we move on, this is a card that is incredibly hyped. People are over the moon about it. I have it at number 14, and you don't even have it on your list.
I do not have it on my list, though.
So I will say that, like, even though I'm putting it at 14, I do think it's a bit overrated. A lot of people would put this in their top 5 of the set, like, quite happily, I feel like.
This might be a card that might be overrated because of the legendary stamp. I wonder if this card had a common or uncommon or even a rare stamp like Minnie Mouse, would it have a fraction of the hype, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Like, the legends always demand a bunch of attention.
Yeah.
Some of them don't live up to it.
As they should. They're meant to be splashy, exciting effects, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Moving on to your number 14.
Oh, see, this is the real yellow draw engine. That's actually such good timing. Oh, that's unplanned. That's very funny. So the Stitched Carefree Snowboarder is a 5 ink, inkable 4/5 in yellow. Whenever he quests, if you have 2 other characters in play, 2 or more, I suppose, you draw a card and you quest for 2. So I just feel like this card is exactly... Actually, we're talking about blue-yellow and kind of amber mid-range decks in general. This feels like a piece to that puzzle. He, like, attacks things very well. He contests for the board. If you want to be doing song things, like, it's really nice to have a card that gives you the card draw and card advantage. Like, if you're going to be picking off your opponent's stuff with Thunderbolts and, like, Strength, having a card that helps you extend your board so you can do those things and continue to sing and maintain an advantage. Like, I've definitely been testing some Amber Steel Song Shells, and this is, like, the card that, like, if this guy sticks for 1.5 turns, 1 or 2 turns, it definitely, or if your opponent has to sacrifice a meaningful amount to deal with it, this is the card that makes you go, like, oh, this feels good. Now we're playing some good Lorcana, but it is definitely, like, it doesn't help you deal with evasives, so it has its weaknesses, like, and it's, like, a little below rate. Like, you can get more stats than this for the number. But, like, I like that it ends the game, especially if we're talking about these blue-yellow decks. If you compare it to something like P, I don't know if this card should go in your blue-yellow deck, just hypothetically. Like, this quest for 2, and, like, ending the game is a bit of a commodity when you have a sweeper in your deck, right? So it is curious.
Yeah. I love what you say about the questing, too. And I definitely like this card quite a bit. Very, very solid addition. In fact, I find it really interesting that this is an Amber card, because I saw some people criticizing the 5-cost Pete from this set, saying that, oh, this card's not good. Look at the Queen, the 4/5 for 5 that taps the drawer card from Amethyst. And, that card's not playable anymore. And, they were like, well, this card's not playable, so Pete shouldn't be. And the thing is, it's an Amber card. It's not an Amethyst card. Amber doesn't get as much card draw, so every piece of card draw counts for so much. And then, like you say, the quest 2 is going to really add up, where you're not only getting those cards, you're ending the game in the process.
Yep. You're ending the game with a card that is not trivial to take out while maintaining card advantage, so... Really nice card. Very, very snowball-y card, if you'll excuse the winter-themed fun.
My number 13 is Pudge Controls the Weather, which is kind of a strange card. It's a 2-cost 1/3, but you're never paying 2 for it. Because if you have a character named Lilo in play, you can play it for free. So this card... on the face of it, kind of weak, right? You're paying 2 for a 1/3 that quests for 1. You never want to do that. If you're doing that, you're kind of just giving up. However, the fact you can play it for 0, like something I know from playing other card games, is things that can be played for 0 are always worth some attention. Because when you have an ink system like this, where you're having to play ink for every spell, things that cost 0 kind of break that paradigm a bit. Now, Pudge is not the most thrilling card that costs 0, because the body's a bit weak, and you do need a Lilo in play, which is going to warp your deck building a bit. But I know people have been experimenting with this card in Dogs style decks. I know people have also been experimenting with it in Amber Steel. And I just think maybe the right shell comes along to make Pudge the card you need to have those explosive turns early on in the game, and maybe take advantage of that extra character in play as a result to make your tramp cheaper or something like that.
Oh, this is when I realized I forgot to put Pudge on my list. Oh, I checked my notes when you pulled up Pudge, and I was like, oh no. Well, I don't know if it actually would make my list, but it is like, as you said, the fact that it is free does make it incredibly potent. Like, we both have a sidebar on the underdogs later, and like, that's something that, like, it's cheaper if you're on the draw, and like Pudge in the system of Lorcana, if you're on the draw but you have a Lilo and a couple Pudges, it's like you almost use the extra card to take some more initiative, and it helps you sing stuff like, it doesn't sing strength on its own, but it makes strength more potent, if that's something you're doing.
I've had a game where it helped me sing Under the Sea really early, because I had 2 Pudges.
Oh, that's pretty sweet.
You know, suddenly I'm singing Under the Sea on turn, like, I think I sang it on turn 3. Just ridiculous.
That's pretty absurd. That's nice. That sounds good. Obviously, the discount.
No, continue.
Sorry. I also wanted to specifically talk about the way I've made my list. I've definitely tried to make my list in a way where I am more discussing the potential of a card in a vacuum, maybe, rather than discussing how it slots into current decks. Which is why some of the decisions, like, I mean, you have Mini on your list and I have Mulan on my list. Maybe some of them can sometimes look a little odd because I'm not always considering exactly where they go, but more like the potential for them in the future of Lorcana Core Constructed, or even Infinity, right?
No, I definitely agree with that. Like, Pudge is a card where I wouldn't be surprised if, give it a month, Pudge doesn't show up in any top 8s.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very realistic outcome. But the card has a lot of potential because it's so unique. It's doing such a unique thing within Lorcana. And I really want to spotlight that potential, not just for, like, the next few months, but also for set 12, set 13, like you say, Infinity, all these sorts of things. You know, these are the cards that are exciting to me for those as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you hear about me talking about testing Steel Song and like green boost decks and stuff like that. Like, we have to think about the world that might exist outside the scope of the last competitive tournament, right? Because who knows what the scope of the next competitive tournament will be, right?
No, exactly. I agree completely. You never know how things are going to shift, and recognizing the powerful cards is a great way to be prepared for that.
Yep.
Your number 13?
Oh, Tigger. Wonderful Things. I think this card is just like, we finally got like a snake/fox type effect. It's on a pretty reasonable minion, and it even has the advantage that I can bounce your opponent's 2-drop, which I found to be quite powerful. Like, oh, this can come in and bounce your opponent's Calhoun, or bounce their, like, Willow even, something like that, which is like a pretty big tempo boost. And then it has the side effect where it bounces your Doc, or bounces your boosted, like, Flynn or something, like, or in a very low to the ground way, kind of maybe bounce your thing that quested so you can replay it and it can't get attacked. Like, it just does a lot of little things very well. I don't think this is an instant 4 of anywhere, but it just does a lot of little things well. Recycling your exerted minions, maybe your Calhoun attacks something and then you bounce your Calhoun, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree completely. I like Tigger a lot. Funnily enough,
sorry, sidebar. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about like the smoothing and consistency in this set, by the way. Like, not a lot of snap 4-ups, but a lot of cards that look a lot like this.
yeah, like this isn't the craziest, most powerful card ever, but it's doing a lot of things. It's doing them well, and it's inkable.
Exactly.
It's actually funny. You phrased this card the opposite way around to how I originally read it, where I read it as a tempo tool where you bounce Calhoun, but you were like, "Oh, it's a fox. You get to bounce your dock." And like, it took me like a few days to piece that together. It was only last night someone was like, "This card's crazy with dock, right?" I was like, "Oh my god, it is." You know? It's very versatile in that way.
Yeah, it's extremely nice and like just nice effect to have access to. Nice when cards do multiple things, especially when they're kind of 4/3s that don't have anything else going for them.
Yeah, exactly. Very quick one, number 12. I have Mulan, Resourceful Recruit as well. Of course, we already talked about her earlier. So moving on to your number 11.
Oh,
sorry, your number 12.
Lilo bundled up. Yeah. So Lilo, I forget if I read the text on Tager. It's okay. Is a 2-ink uninkable 1/2 that quests for 2 in steel. And during the opponent's turn, the first time she would take damage, she takes no damage instead. Notably, this has been changed so you can no longer give her damage with Malicious or Cheshire Cat through this effect, which was the initial way most people read this card, but we've obviously gotten some recent rules changes that override that. Anyway, this card is actually really annoying to remove, and you were talking about Pudge earlier. I've also seen people play this card in like a Kiwi style shell, where you play a lot of ward critters and some bodyguards and a lot of 2-questers, and then this card starts looking really annoying because you have to remove so many things. But I think this card is just like, if there's an aggressive steel deck, this, especially with the amount of Lilo payoffs and synergy we have now, obviously a lot of those are in Ember, not in steel. I think this card is just going to see a fair amount of play. You're going to, speaking of the future potential sidebar I had earlier, like, maybe this doesn't see play now, but it's definitely going to see play. It is a very good rate. You look at something like Nala. Nala is so much less resilient than this card. It doesn't have a point of power. It then, like, it dies easier. Like, Cheshire Cat has a better impact on that card. So this card is just, like, the name matters. It quests for 2. It's very resilient. It's a really nice card.
Yeah, I love this card. The Nala comparison is really on point. Like, Nala's a great card. I think Lilo's largely a touch better. Quests for less, but like you say, so obnoxious to remove. Lives through so many things. Like, I've had games playing blue-green against Nala decks where you can sing a couple copies of Malicious to remove her. Or sing a Malicious so that you can attack her. Lilo just does not care about a lot of this stuff. Very, very tough cookie. Especially against Cheshire Cat too. Cheshire Cat, one of the best cards in core right now. Having an ability that helps you live through it. Also, shout out to the flavor text. Easily the best flavor text in the set. My big dumb sister said I had to wear warm clothes, so I took all of them. Adorable and excellent flavor, because of course, you're trying to challenge down Lilo, but you're hitting the cloves instead.
I might have quoted this approximately 70 times after reading it. I love this flavor text. Like, this whole set so actually perfect. Just has wonderful flavor text, but this is just like a really good example.
No, I agree completely. This one really made me smile too. My number 11, Angel Siren Singer, which is our first time seeing an underdog on this top 15. Angel is a 2/2 for 2, quests for 1, has Singer free, so, you know, Singer free, very good, for singing something like Strength of a Raging Fire, but she also has an ability, the Underdog ability, which I really hope is a staple of the game moving forwards. If this is your first turn and you're not the first player, you pay 1 less to play this character. I love the Underdog ability. I know you love it even more than me, which is impressive. Just getting to play cards that are more powerful than 1-drops on turn 1 to make up for being on the draw is great. It gives you that a little bit of catch up for being, slightly behind. Angel's my favorite one of the underdogs, or was when I made this list. I will say, I think White Rabbit and Christopher Robin are also excellent. I only wanted to put one underdog on my list, so I chose Angel, but really any of those three could be in this spot right now. Singer Free is probably the most interesting of those three because, you can sing an early strength to deal with your opponent's, 1 or 2 drop. You can also sing Akud, which is a very cool card. And who knows what other songs are going to come out that synergize perfectly with this card. Of course, Cinderella, the 1-drop, was a staple of the game for a long time until rotation. And I think Angel has a lot of potential in a very similar way.
Speaking of putting Infinity cards on your list, this is a nice one in Infinity.
Oh yeah, this is like automatic Steel Song.
Hello,
staple.
I would like us to Cinderella if I'm happen to go second, please. These are really cool. Like, I'll talk about the underdogs a little bit in general. They're so interesting to build around because you still have to have a curve that functions when you're on the play. But when you're on the draw, you would actually, obviously, if you're going to go to the effort of including an underdog in your deck, you would usually prefer to play the underdog on turn 1, with some exceptions. So it becomes a little bit of a balancing act. I think they're fascinating from a deck building perspective. I think it's good that we're getting the really simple, clean version of this mechanic now, where it's just like, you don't have to remember who went first on the 3rd or 4th turn, even if, like, no one likes going second from the perspective of most decks are behind when they go second, and this is a very common point of frustration in card games in general, and like Lorcana especially. I think, and while I think you should generally be making your best laid plans around the fact that you are sometimes going to go second, I think there are ways to mitigate the play draw disparity that we have. And while I'm not 100% sure the underdogs will get us there, I think every piece of the puzzle is important. And I like that they do not have any memory issues. Oh, it's my first turn and I went second. Look, I'm going to show you my underdog. Because I do think you could have gone a more complex direction with this mechanic where you would have had to remember who is the starting player. And I think this is a very elegant design. I think that it is slightly restrictive in the way that they all have to be cards you can play on turn 1, but it's a first shot at the mechanic. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I agree completely. I fully co-sign everything you just said there. Incredibly elegant designs. I don't think you've had the chance to play Limited for this set yet.
I have not. I was flying in a couple nights ago, and I did not go to my 2:30 draft the night after.
I got to do some Sealed on Friday at the pre-release, and I had 3 underdogs in my deck. I had Judy Hopps, White Rabbit, Christopher Robin. I chose to take the draw every single game that I won the die roll.
I believe choosing the draw in Sealed is just called Aska technology.
Yeah, arguably it's good regardless, but when you have 3 underdogs in your deck, you're like, wow, being on the draw is almost an upside right now.
You just want the draw.
In multiple ways.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I think even there are some archetypes in core where you could maybe push your deck building to want the draw if you have enough underdogs that you actually want to play. But carry on.
No, I agree, especially in the right matchups. That could definitely end up happening.
Yeah.
Your number 11, the Red Songs, which I assume meant marching off the battle and grab your bow.
I don't know if there are others that could fall under this umbrella, but yes, you're right. I think
there are 2 other Red Songs. They're much worse.
That's believable. They're so bad I didn't even have them in my head. So Marching Off to Battle is a 4-ink song that is inkable, and the effect of it is that if a character is banished this turn, you draw 2 cards. Whereas Grab Your Bow is a 5-ink uninkable song that destroys 2 creatures with 2 power or less. And so what's really nice about Grab Your Bow is it almost functions as a pseudo sweeper, and there's an absolute ton of creatures played in core that just fall to this, even starting at 3 and up, Headless Horseman takes out Genie, Tiana, all of these things, and this is 2 horsemen, and it's singable. Like, talking about this card almost makes me want to go back to the drawing board and test it more, because I've, like, had a week off playing Grab Your Bow, and I'm not sure I'm ready to go another one. It's just, like, such a high dopamine card. You get to snipe your opponent's stuff. Even, like, what I like about this from a certain perspective is that even if it is a song, you can just play it for 5 ink, and you're often pretty happy about that, especially if your late game is stronger than your opponent's. Often you trade even on tempo just playing this for 5 ink, and it's really nice.
Yeah, I think maybe me not including these on my list is one of the misses of my top 15. I do think I'm not convinced yet that the Ruby decks are there yet in core. Maybe the right build comes along though, who knows? But both these cards are very powerful, and if the Ruby decks aren't there yet, they will be soon. Give one more set of solid role-playing Ruby cards like this, and suddenly the color's going to be great, honestly.
Yeah, I think
it just
especially
needs the right pieces.
I barely covered Marching Off because it is just a draw two, but it is just exactly what the color needs. It's almost more what the color needs than Grab Your Bow, because it is an inkable song. It draws you cards, which helps you hit your ink, which is something that Red Purple has historically struggled with. It's got all these little things going for it that I really like.
Yeah, Friends on the Other Side was great. Obviously, this is more situational, but does the same thing.
Yep.
Our number 10s are the same.
Oh, that's so good.
Amuti.
I'll let you go first, but the only thing I want to say is I have cooled on this card since it was previewed.
Yeah, I've definitely cooled on it a bit too, although I've not played with it nearly as much as you have. However, I think this is one of those very high potential cards where, with the right shell, the right pieces discovered, it's going to be very interesting. It's a free cost uninkable song, and it says you pay 2 less for the next character you play this turn, draw a card. So songs are already baseline pretty strong as a mechanic. This one's really interesting because it lets you kind of do what we were talking about with Pudge, where you get to kind of do things for free or cheat on ink a little bit. Suddenly you sing, you can have these lines where you play an angel on 1 because you're on the draw, and you sing a Kuda and Muti on 2, and you're playing a 4-drop on turn 2. Now that's a really extreme case, but there are also games where, you play an Ursula Vanessa on turn 2, and then turn 3 you're playing a 5-drop. That's pretty realistic. You can have these you can play 6 drops a couple turns early as well, and trigger song synergies of cards like Ariel. I know you've explored these shells quite a bit, and they haven't quite come together, but the card's just so powerful that I have to imagine it will find a home at some point, even if it's not immediately.
This card is a puzzle, and the reason I messed with it so much is because I love solving puzzles. However, this is a difficult one. I do think this card is extremely powerful. It has a lot of tuning knobs tuned downwards in terms of it's a discount for 2, it's uninkable. So you do get these games where you have a slightly clunky spot if you draw multiples, but you don't really want to play less than 4 in your deck that's built around drawing a Cood after the mulligan. So it's a puzzle, but it's a really fun and interesting puzzle, and I love that this card exists from that perspective. Even if it doesn't end up on that tier 1 power level, it tickles your brain and makes you say what if, right?
Yeah, exactly. What if? And I hope we'll find the answer at some point, because I love this card.
Same.
Very cool design.
Same.
My number 9, Raging Storm, the traditional board wipe. An 8-cost uninkable action that says banish all characters. Now, this is not Be Prepared. Be Prepared was a much stronger card. It costs 1 less. And it was singable, which, came up. You could sing it off your Sisu and then immediately start rebuilding before your opponent.
Yep.
So this is definitely a weaker card. However, I think sweepers in general are really compelling within Lorcana because the game is all about characters. Even decks that are singing songs and playing cantrips will often have, over half their deck be characters. And those decks are pretty rare. Most decks are like 90% characters or whatever, you know? So having a card that banishes all characters is just so powerful within this game. Of course, the big question mark on this card is 8 ink. You know, getting to 8 is tough. Of course, the obvious home is the Sapphire Amber decks people have been experimenting with, where you can go Cinderella on 3, Moana on 4, and then have your board wipe set up very quickly. I think people haven't figured out how to tune those Sapphire Amber decks yet to make them, you know, make them the best they can be. Maybe there's some card we're missing. And obviously in other homes, the 8 cost is going to be tougher in a deck like Amethyst Amber, for example. The 8 cost is pretty intense. But, you know, I can't ignore the fact that we now have a proper sweeper in Lorcana again, especially when so much of the game at the moment is about characters, is about fighting for the board and trying to get slightly ahead on board. Being able to reset that is just such a powerful, unique effect.
Yeah, when you start looking at cards like Cheshire Cat and Dumbo, and then you look at Raging Storm, you're like, well, now there's maybe a real way to go over the top of those cards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how long have the Amethyst Mirrors just been about desperately fighting to get ahead on evasives?
Yep.
Raging Storm doesn't care about that at all.
And then you have, as you said, you do have compelling blue ramp that gets you straight here. I do think the cost is very prohibitive, but the power is there. Like, I'm glad there is a sweeper, and I'm sure there will be shells that utilize this to kind of say, all right, I'm not meta wrestling with you. We're gonna get these creatures off the board, and we're gonna start like playing a game where we both spend ink and I have higher power level cards like Pete, Ghost of Christmas Future, and these things. Like, I'm going to establish card advantage, and I'm going to sweep all of your tools off the board first.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very powerful stuff.
Yep.
Rattling through a couple, we have number 9 for you.
Oh, I put this one way higher than you. That's funny.
You did. I feel like I could have maybe put it higher on my list. I just haven't played with the card enough yet. But
that's fine.
I do like the card a lot.
Yeah.
Then my number 8, a bit higher than yours, Lilo Bundled Up.
Yep.
Which I think is just, you know, like we said, if an aggressive steel deck is a thing, it will include Lilo.
Wait, I need to tell a really terrible joke.
Yeah?
My Big Dumb podcast co-host said I had to make a top 15 list, so I made one.
Oh my god. Rude. With your number 8.
Oh, we have Sven. Oh, I like the art on this card for one. Just to lead out. This is the 4 ink 2/3 in Amethyst. It is uninkable. It has Rush, Challenger +3, and Evasive, so it has keyword soup. I find it personally entertaining that this card doesn't have Alert instead of Evasive, but I guess maybe that's not a mechanic in Amethyst. However, I think this card is pretty nice. I think being able to clean up your opponents like Dumbo or Genie or Elsa, like just having, and also like Daisy Duck, like it just has a few, like 5 power is so much, and it just like trades with a lot of things. It kind of, even if it is uninkable, it kind of solves a lot of problems for you, and then maybe even sticks around to solve more problems in the future, or forces like a slightly awkward trade or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, getting that 2 for 1 and having a body around for Dumbo is always going to be worth a lot, right?
Yeah, these purple mirrors are so much about the evasive wars, and for a long time we didn't really have a way to get back into them, and I think this might be part of that puzzle.
Yep, exactly. And this makes me think of maybe a weird callback, Madam Mim Fox, where that really gave these purple decks a tool to deal with a card like Daisy Duck. And, you know, Sven, your Amber opponents are always going to have to wonder, do they have a Sven in their deck? Do they have a Sven in their hand? Am I allowed to quest and maybe get my Daisy Duck eaten for free?
Yeah, since there's a universe where you're just going to play Genie on that turn, and you're going to feel really silly that you didn't quest your Daisy.
Yeah, it puts them in a really tight squeeze, which I think is a very impressive thing from a card.
Yeah, because any small tempo loss is a big deal when you're playing against these purple decks, or these purple decks in general.
Yeah, exactly. Our number 7 is the same card, and I think some people are going to be surprised that this isn't higher up on the list for either of us. Pete, Ghost of Christmas Future.
We could have just made the same list and been done with it, Dan.
Oh, Hano means family wouldn't have made it then.
Oh, true.
Pete Ghost of Christmas Future, a 5-cost 5/5, quests for 1, boost 1. Whenever he quests, look at a number of cards from the top of the deck equal to the number of cards under him. Put 1 into your hand and the rest on the bottom. So this is very similar to Stitch, which we talked about earlier, where we have a 5-cost bulky creature that quests to draw cards. Of course, slightly bigger, quests for slightly less. And you can boost multiple times if you want to get card selection and look at 2 or 3 or 4 cards to pick the perfect one.
Yeah, this card is fascinating. I think when I saw, almost like a Kuden Angel, when I saw the spoiler, I was like, wow, this card is absurd. But then it does have some pretty major weaknesses, which I would say is really good design for this card. Like, you have to pay an extra ink whenever you want to see another card. It only quests for 1. It doesn't contest the evasive war at all, so it's a big question mark whether you want to play this in decks that have access to those evasives or have to fight over the sky. But in the bigger blue decks, the decks that are going to want to play like Cinderella and stuff, this card comes down and gives you all this card selection, all this extra value. And I think this card is a really good example of a card that works well with like Raging Storm, because you clear out the board, your opponent's not gonna, because this card's a put in a squeeze if your opponent is ahead on lore and questing, because this card's not gonna help you race. But if you do take out all your opponent's stuff at one point, then a card that draws you an extra card every turn and quests for 1 significantly more appealing. Also, just the last point, this card plays very well against Hades and Let It Go and Into the Unknown, because you put a card under it, and then it gets Hades, but you get 2 ink.
Yeah, a lot of things going for this card. Very nice to see card draw in Sapphire. Of course, Sapphire does get some card draw, but really not as much as a color like Amethyst. So any good card draw in Sapphire is really appreciated, just to allow it to compete in those late games, make it so you don't need Amethyst in your deck to play late game decks. I will say the one thing that's stopping me rating this card higher is that it is quite slow. You know, you pay 5 for this character, you pay another 1 to boost. You're still not going to get a card off of him until the turn after. So, you know, he is a bit slow compared to maybe some of the other cards we've talked about or will be talking about. But definitely very, very powerful card, has a lot going for him. My number 6, which I was surprised not to see on your list. Genie Magical Researcher.
It almost got there. There's a lot of good cards in this set.
Yeah, there are so many good cards in this set. I love Genie, which is a 3/4 for free. Boost 1. Quest 1. Gets an extra quest for every card under him. So, you know, if you play him on curve, he's maybe not the most exciting. You know, he comes down as a 3/4 for free, quest 1. You can make him quest for 2 the turn afterwards. Where this card really excites me is in board stalls, where you can play him in the mid game, immediately boost him again the turn after. Suddenly he's questing for 3. Maybe you have something like a Minnie Mouse, suddenly he's questing for 4. That's a lot of questing power, and if your opponent isn't able to deal with him, like, especially if you're sitting there staring at each other, you don't even need to quest him immediately. You can keep growing him, keep getting those cards underneath him for a big quest turn. Kind of the clock will be ticking down an awful lot. I think this card is really nice. I think it's also really nice having this card alongside a card like Cheshire Cat. That gives a really powerful boost core to an amethyst-based boost deck to work with. So I like Genie a lot, personally.
So do I. I also think it's worth pointing out this card is pretty cool with Pocahontas. You could do some wacky things with that. You could, like, get Genie to 4 lore and then get Quest of Pocahontas and get 9 lore. That's pretty nice.
Oh yeah, I've seen Aska doing some Pocahontas Genie things. And it always looks really silly when you get those 7 or 9 lore burst turns out of nowhere.
It's pretty great. Yeah, this card is nice. I left it off the list mostly just out of a little bit of, like, these cards are all really powerful. It's hard to pinpoint exactly which one is going to be a role player here or there, but it's a really nice card. Having a mana sink is really nice, and, like, this is also the kind of card that's really good against Let It Go. If your opponent has to Hades or Let It Go this, it's going to go in your Inkwell, and you're going to get 2 or 3 or 4 ink or whatever. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, Boost 1 is so good for that compared to Boost 2.
The only real downside of this, it almost has the Cheshire Cat syndrome where you never want to do anything with it once you put it into play. And unlike Cheshire Cat, your opponent's probably going to actually take action into it. Like, they can quest things into this because they're probably pretty happy to trade this back if you decide to trade their 2-drop with this or something. So that's, like, the downside of it versus Cat is like a... Cat just says no. It's like, no questing, no ground questing. We're going to sit here a while. But this card doesn't have the same, like, aura, the same effect on the board.
Yeah, it is a bit strange that this card doesn't really function as a free drop a lot of the time in that way.
Yes, I agree.
But I do think this card is still very powerful. I'm excited to see if this puts up any results in Amethyst decks.
Very high potential card, for sure.
Your number 6 we covered earlier. The underdogs. I don't know if there are any other underdogs you want to cover in particular.
These 3 are the good ones. There's, like, the blue one that you probably put in Kiwi. Christopher Robin's pretty good, but these are the important ones, I think.
Yeah, I like White Rabbit a lot in the aggressive Emerald decks.
Yeah.
Like, getting, like, sometimes you are pretty happy to cast a Go-Go on turn 2. This is like casting a Go-Go on turn 1, which is very nice.
And then sometimes you can still just cast this on turn 2, and it's non-embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly. Our number 5 is the same card.
Oh my god.
We have to stop doing this. Moana, Curious Explorer. Do you want to cover Moana?
Sure. So Moana is one of the Sapphire Legendaries. She's a 5-ink, inkable 4/4/2 in Sapphire. And her text is very simple. She's allowed to ink cards from your discard. This is an effect that you might underrate until you've had it in play, and you look in your graveyard and you see your sail, and you say, oh, I get it now. And you realize she actually says, at the start of your turn, draw a card and put it into your inkwell. Like...
Oh, I actually think it's not at the start of your turn, it's also when she enters play a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's true. I slightly off comparison there. 100%, yeah. So whenever you have this in play, you get to ink cards from your discard, and this can also mean that you can cast something mid-turn that you're allowed to ink if you're missing something, or take a trade and ink it. Like, and if even something like Pete, if Pete dies with a couple cards under him, he can leave you with a lot of fuel for this card, even if the cards you... Say you're playing blue-yellow, and some of the cards that go to your discard are uninkable, like Raging Storm, because you're playing a more control element, like Cinderella or Raging Storm. You can play things during the turn for this to ink, so there's a lot of, like, little things going on with that. And it's also just a very reasonably sized body. Like, 4/4 for a card that draws you an ink every turn. 4/4 in Witchcraft for 2 is kind of absurd if you think about it, so... It also synergizes perfectly with Cinderella. You play your Cinderella, you play this, you play the ink from your bin, so you get a free ink from there, and then you get a second free ink from the Cinderella, so you kind of just start, like, pulling out on resources in a pretty absurd way. I think the puzzle with this is figuring out exactly what you do with that, whether it involves Pete, or Storm, or Cauldron, or both, or, like, Maui, or red cards. Like, there's a lot of directions. This does sing Grab Your Bow, because we were talking about those earlier. But... it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I love this card. I love that Cinderella Moana curve you were talking about. I also think it's interesting to compare this to Pete, Because, Pete's problem was that card's quite slow, doesn't do anything the turn he comes down. Moana does. Moana is feels to me like Pete, but kind of a bit faster.
Yep.
Where she comes down and she's immediately getting you that card by getting an ink from your discard. And also, Pete is quite bad at singing because you really want to be questing with him. Moana, you're very happy to sing, a Grab Your Bow or a Let It Go, like you said, because you're not missing out on any of the value in that exchange.
Also, by the time Moana's gotten you a couple ink, it can start brawling. Whereas, as you said, Pete doesn't really want to start brawling.
Yeah, exactly.
There's going to be a point where you're like, oh, I don't really mind losing this Moana. I'm just going to start trading it.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. Love this card. Very excited to play with Moana. My number 4, Angel Experiment 6/4. Angel is a free for 4. If you have no cards in your hand, this character gains resist +2. And once during your turn, you may choose and discard a card to deal 2 to a chosen character. She also quests for 1, which is not the most. In fact, I'd say probably my biggest point of hesitation with Angel is that she doesn't quest for 2. But in exchange, she is incredibly versatile. She gets to throw around cards if you want to, or just chill there and do that later on if you'd rather wait. You can use the discard to enable things like Circle of Life or Rockstar Lilo or anything that's interacting with your discard. The 2 damage is kind of crazy. You can take off small creatures like Willow, or you can use it with a Strength of a Raging Fire to take out something bigger, like a Clarabelle or a Hades or what have you. So the 2 damage is really, really good, actually. I think something that people might underrate about this card when they're looking at her. You don't have to pay any ink for that 2 damage. How many cards are there in the game that meaningfully affect the board, can even banish opposing characters repeatedly, once every turn for the rest of the game, she can use this ability and it doesn't cost you ink. You get to keep doing other things whilst getting this ability, whilst getting a free fire the cannons every turn.
Yeah, this card just turns every card into your hand into an inkable fire the cannons that doesn't kill illusions effectively.
Yeah.
And I love that it doesn't have to tap for its effects like Isma. You're not introducing that risk like with Isma or Dumbo. It can sit there and continue to threaten. Like if your opponent's playing an aggressive deck, they play out all their cards and you can just keep sniping them, and maybe they can't quest in the late game because the card you draw is just always going to take out their new card, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just really potent effect to have on the board. Really makes it very hard for your opponents to play out anything small. Yep. Or even to take profitable trades. Their large character eats your medium-sized one in combat, and then Angel's going to finish it off.
Yep. And this card also has the upside that you said it doesn't quest for 2, which is notable, but it does quest really well when it quests, because you're going to be turning the sideways when you're out of cards, and then it has 5 willpower, which is really nice.
Yeah, I think Resist 2 is really easy to underrate. Obviously, Resist 1 is good. But Resist 2, remember how much of a nuisance the Shift Rhino is to get off the board?
Yep.
And that's Angel. Angel has Resist 2. In fact, she has it all the time. Not just until she takes damage. That's really hefty to punch through.
Yeah, as long as you have no cards in hand, she does have that Resist 2.
Yeah.
Very powerful effects.
Your number 4.
Oh yeah, it felt a bit like cheating to put Let It Go on the list, honestly, considering we already had it back in first chapter. This is actually the second time we've had Let It Go. But we have to rate the card within the context of current core constructed, and I think when we get cards like Moana, we get cards like Pete, we already have Elsa, Demona, Hades, you gotta talk about Let It Go, right? So Let It Go, 5 ink song, puts a character into their player's inkwell face down and exerted in Sapphire. So that kind of blue removal that gets rid of a character and puts it in their inkwell, in your opponent's inkwell. I don't know. This card is really nice. It's a really nice effect for Blurple to have access to, which is kind of interesting because this card was not very good back in like the old pre-core meta pre-rotation when we had the old cards, but the way the games play out now, this card is very good.
Yeah, the games now are so much about fighting for the board. Because you don't have, like, obviously we have Raging Storm, but we don't have Be Prepared, and we don't have as many unfair engines like Diablo that sidestep caring about your opponent's board in different ways.
Yep.
So it's really, really important to just be able to fight for the board efficiently, and paying 0 ink to remove a character is the most efficient way to fight for the board you can get, really.
Yeah, you can. Every deck has to Mud Rustle now to some description, or like the majority of decks, and this is very like this card being good is very indicative of that. And like in the late game against aggressive decks, you can just cast this on anything they draw and get rid of it, or you can use it to fight over the board in the mid game. This is good with Demona. There's just a lot of things this card does that it didn't used to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. I also think it's notable that arguably the best deck before set 11 was Blurple, and of course this is great in Blurple with, Elsa sings it perfectly. You mentioned Hades looking for a deal earlier.
Yep.
That card, amazing at singing Let It Go, also makes it really hard for your opponent to let you draw cards because you might find a Let It Go off the Hades.
Yep, that is just like all synergy, all gravy. It kind of, if you wanted to play Hades and Blurple, it's almost like you got more new cards than you actually got, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. Hades is a lot better in Blurple now than it used to be because of this card, like you say.
Blurple actually got extra playsets, not just Sven and Let It Go. They actually also got the ability to play Hades, which feels so crazy to me. I don't know. Carry on.
It is crazy. I agree. My number 3, Nani Stage Manager, a free cost free. When you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a character card with cost 2 or less, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom. This card is sick. We were talking about Amber really wanting more card advantage earlier.
Yep.
And they have been printing more card advantage before Winterspell. Look at a card like Ariel in Whispers of the Well. But they've kind of gone crazy with the card advantage this set. They're really pushing Amber, it feels like. And this is an incredible piece of card advantage because free mana free, or free ink free is just a great rate, very sturdy body to sing songs with, to challenge with, to quest with. It does all those things really well as a free. And then you not only get to essentially draw a card off of Nani, you also get card selection. You get to go, okay, do I want a dock to draw more cards here? Do I want a tramp to target my Mulan with and gain a ton of lore? Like, do I want a Lilo, the 2-drop that returns from your discard every turn, to grind out the long game? Getting that card selection as well, getting the perfect 1 or 2-drop from the cards you see really matters. I love this card. I think this card is an automatic staple in basically any Amber deck that's considering playing 1 and 2 drops. It should have this card.
I agree 100% with everything you said. I think you mentioned Amber getting card draw. I think the elegant design around Amber getting card draw is Nani's secretly not just card draw, she's also a 3-power thing. Whereas if you look at these old Amber Steel and Dogs lists, they have essentially had no trading power unless they find a strength, or some of the old Amber Steel decks used to play Calhoun, or like so Strength of Raging Fire Calhoun, and then occasionally Dogs would be able to use Tramp 2 to challenge. I think it's very notable with Nani that she doesn't just smooth your draw, because the floor on this card is 3 ink 3/3 that draws you an ink. Like, that is the base level of the card before you start talking about selection. You also have to consider that this is a card that actually trades for your opponent's things, so you can create you suddenly, it's like, oh, I can actually attack my opponent's Calhoun, which is something that Dogs was like, you had to build that, you had to assemble that before. And I think that's part of what I really like about the designs in this set. They're expanding the colors to, like, maybe Amber shouldn't be able to challenge all the time, and the trade-off of this is it's a 3-ink 3/3 that only quests for 1, but oh my god, you can actually, like, attack something. And it just adds depth to the card. And
That's
color.
a great point. I hadn't really thought about the Calhoun thing, but that's a fantastic point. These decks have always struggled against Calhoun, and this is the perfect answer in a way, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I love Nani. I think this is a fantastic addition. One thing that made me realize this card is great is consider that before, back in set 10, a lot of people were putting the free cost Clarabelle into Dogs.
They sure were.
Free cost Clarabelle is only a 2/3. It doesn't give you card selection, it just draws a card. And half the time it just doesn't do that. If you're on the draw, sometimes your opponent's just perpetually going to have less cards than you, you know?
Yep.
You compare this card to Clarabelle, it's like, wow, this card is ridiculous.
Also, this is a really nice card for, like, Infinity Amber Steel type decks. One little note on what I said about this card being elegantly designed. I just love that Amber is getting cards like this and not cards like Piglet Pirate Ship Captain. Like, the cards that are just, like, obnoxious, snowbally. This is just the card that, like, everyone just wants to play good Lorcana. This card just plays good Lorcana. Right?
No, exactly. I agree completely. Your number 3, we have Angel Experiment 624, which of course we just talked about.
Yeah, we already covered this
one.
And
then I believe our number 2s are the same. Grandmother Willow, Ancient Advisor. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so Willow is a 2-ink uninkable 1/2 in yellow that quests for 1, and has a very powerful effect. It is in fact a pseudo lantern effect, where once during your turn, I believe this is actually interpreted though as the first character you play each turn. So the first character you play each turn after you play this card, after it's already in play, you play 1 less for your next character. So you play it, and then the next character costs 1 less, and then that's, like, the case every turn this is in play. You're not allowed to save the discount, so to speak. This card is really, really good. This is just like a smoothing effect, though it is uninkable. It gives depth to these yellow-purple lantern decks that I think only had, like, a 75% chance to hit lantern if they full mold for it, but now they have, like, they can play Willow, and they can snowball with it. Or they could get that extra ink from there. Dogs would never play Lantern, but Dogs wants to play this card. There's, like, just... I touched on Yellow Purple first, because this card just enables a tier of yellow mid-range with Nani. Yellow Purple doesn't want to play Nani, but... this kind of yellow mid-range that we've never had access to before. Dogs has also... or at least not since Core Constructed became the format. Dogs was always a very aggressive deck. Amber Steel was always a very, very aggressive deck. And, like, Yellow Purple is the only exception. Now this is, like, adds more depth to that thing. And I really enjoy that. It is a little high roll, but also I think there is very significant counterplay to this card. The moment this card gets hit with Elsa or Angel, occasionally it's just like, oh, the fun's over. And now I can't do the thing I was going to do on my turn 5 or whatever because my Willows died. The best laid plans sometimes go awry, right? So I think this card has its upsides and downsides, but is indeed a very powerful card for Ember.
Yeah, I co-sign everything you just said. Like, some decks are going to prefer Lantern over this, but they'll probably play both in some number.
Yep.
And then some decks are going to really appreciate that extra character for Tramp 7, for Strength of a Raging Fire, or such. And just such a powerful effect. Powerful with Nani as well, a card we were just talking about. Like, that extra bit of ramp doesn't just have to play expensive things. It can also let you play your Nani and get card advantage the following turn as well, which is very nice.
You play your Nani without having to ink first. Like, that's a form of selection as well.
Yeah, suddenly you can find ink and keep your cards in hand if you want.
Yep.
Our number ones might not be very surprising or new cards if you've been paying close attention. So We'll just reveal them quickly. My number 1 is Let It Go. Your number 1 is Nani. Just to give Let It Go another shout out, of course, Blurple was arguably the best deck in set 10. It's going to be a great deck in set 11 for sure. And Let It Go is kind of the best possible card it could get. Like you said, it's opening up multiple play sets by allowing you to play looking for a deal too. So Let It Go just seems like a very strong best card in Winterspell, if a bit of a boring one because it's a reprint. And then of course you have Nani at number 1.
Yeah, I think Nani is just a really high potential card, so I had it over the other ones. I think Let It Go very, very powerful in core and might actually end up having a higher impact. But from my perspective, the things Nani does for Amber are just very deep and wide reaching. And then it's also good in Infinity. So I that's why I put it here.
Also very unique as well, right? Whereas Let It Go is kind of more of the same. We already had Hades 7. We already had Into the Unknown. Nani is a thing we did not have before, really, in this shape.
You might still be right that Let It Go will have the higher impact, though.
Certainly Nani's the more exciting card. I'm more excited to play with Nani than I am with Let It Go.
So am I, but as the resident yellow card sicko, maybe that's unsurprising.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was wondering if this might be your favorite card in the set, so it made me smile when you sent your list over.
Aww.
I saw her at number 1.
This is also the Big Dumb Sister featured on Lilo Bundled Up, so,
Oh my goodness. 3/3s are bigger than 1/2s, so that checks out.
That's true.
Alright. Lots of Winterspell cards to play with. Exciting format ahead of us. I'm crossing my fingers that, Blurple can be contested with some of these other cards once people figure out the right ways to build these Amber decks, to build these Sapphire decks and such. So, because there are a lot of tools here to use and brew with and explore.
Yeah, will Blurple be dethroned? Find out next time on the same bat time, same bat channel.
Oh my goodness. Thank you everyone for listening or watching. If you're over on YouTube, make sure to follow, subscribe, depending on the platform. We will be back with episode 3, hopefully quite a bit sooner than we were back with episode 2, now that we're both settled at home from our travels.
I would love to do an episode next week. As a sidebar, if you have any questions that you'd want us to cover on the pod, drop a comment on the YouTube video, and I'm sure we will get to them. I think that would be exceptional if anyone has anything to ask or discuss. I think it would be fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Or send us an email over at entertheinkwell@gmail.com.
Please
all
do.
one word. Thank you everyone for listening. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.